My dear colleagues, I send you greetings on the opening of your conference, and I hope you're having beautiful spring weather there. Here in Vermont, we're going to have to wait a while before we can get any kind of weather like that. You probably know the title of my paper is Language and Reality in the Time of Abelard and Lu Xiangsham. I get to look at these two 12th century thinkers who shared many themes and contextual challenges that permeated Eurasian intellectual communities. In fact, I think they're archetypical of medieval Eurasian intellectual communities. These far-flung collections of scholars were connected by these deep continent-wide influences. Some of them drawing upon ideas that were earliest formulated in the Zoroastrian text, some drawing on Greek thought back to Plato and earlier to his roots in Pythagoreanism, Buddhist and pre-Buddhist epistemological schools of South Asia, Gnosticisms of various sorts of late antiquity and the medieval period. And for the medieval Europeans, also drawing upon the Islamic schools of inquiry that themselves trace their own roots back to Greece and South Asia. One question that gripped them all, and for various reasons was becoming urgent in the 12th century, was whether the world as we see it is real or not. So real is a distinct problem. It's not really one I'm going to deal much with in the paper. For us in the 20th century, we can call it extramental or demonstrably not a product of human consciousness. But in the 12th century, I think the hypothesis of reality was universally accepted to be that which is primary, underived, irreducible, more or less what is meant by true, Zhen in Chinese, or as dharma, the law in, or just a sort of concept of causality in the South Asian traditions. These real things, their origins and their effects are independent of human perception or interpretation. They are. So the question for many ancient and medieval philosophers was, is there really such a thing as that? So the responses of Abelard and Lu Xiangsham were complex. They were both interested in language in two ways. One is just as a vehicle for describing the perceived world, but second, as itself an instrument for the revelation of primary entities, should there be any. Now, in both cases, they were also struggling between two sort of pressures. On the one hand, there was this perceived ubiquity of these Platonic or idealist philosophies that evidently many philosophers felt sort of threatened by. It was a kind of a miasma for them that had to be defeated. And on the other hand, there's pressure from institutional, structural authorities, including the Latin Church in Europe and the Song imperial state in China, demanding that rationalism be enforced as essential to the legitimation of institutional authority. So only rational epistemology, as employed through law, doctrine, teaching, could reveal what is. The methods employed by these two figures show us, on the one hand, the determination of rationalists in the 12th century to defeat these idealists that they felt were sort of encroaching on them from all directions. But they also anticipate this late medieval turn across Eurasia toward materialism. And in the early modern period, this materialism turns up as fundamental to these theories of race and gender reification and nationalist essentialism, both in Europe and in China. And at the same time, many of the tools coming out of the 12th century later provide the foundation for the means of combating many of these kinds of pathologies coming out of early modern thought. So I emphasize this is not so much a comparative study in the sense of looking at parallels or sort of interesting similarities, but really looking at the local effects of the organically connected, continent-wide influences of the 11th and 12th centuries.